"I do not take orders from anyone," Emily Harper whispered to herself as she adjusted the framed watercolor painting in her small gallery, the soft rain outside casting reflections on the polished wood floors and the faint scent of wet asphalt drifting through the open window. The tiny bell above the entrance chimed softly and she glanced up to see a man standing near the doorway, impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit that contrasted with the muted tones of the rainy street. His eyes, sharp and assessing, giving the impression that he could command any room he entered. Yet here he was, quietly observing the display of paintings with an intensity that made Emily's heart beat a little faster, not from fear, but from the strange mixture of curiosity and awareness that came with recognizing someone who was clearly unaccustomed to being denied. Dominic Rossi, a man rumored to have influence over the city's wealthiest and most powerful, stepped closer, his presence calm but undeniably commanding, the soft rumble of the storm outside punctuating the quiet tension that filled the gallery. Emily continued to move about the room with deliberate composure, guiding a potential client through the delicate artwork, her voice steady, confident, revealing nothing of the awareness she felt of the silent observer. Dominic's gaze followed her movements, noting the precise way she handled the frames, the thoughtful arrangement of colors and textures, and the quiet dignity she carried, every detail reinforcing that she was someone who did not rely on charm or power to command attention, only skill and presence, and that intrigued him more than any display of wealth or authority ever could. As the conversation with the client concluded, Emily offered a polite smile and excused herself, approaching Dominic with a graceful step, her posture poised and eyes meeting his without hesitation, the storm outside intensifying, rain pelting the windows and creating a rhythmic backdrop to this unexpected encounter. Dominic extended a hand in a gesture that was formal yet curious, and Emily shook it, feeling the firm strength of someone who was used to getting what he wanted but sensing immediately that her refusal to be intimidated would make this meeting anything but ordinary. They exchanged brief words about the art and the weather, their dialogue carefully measured, each sentence a test of character and resolve, with Dominic expressing a subtle admiration for her independence while Emily responded with hints of politeness that masked a clear boundary, both aware that this first interaction, seemingly mundane in a small gallery, was the beginning of a dynamic that would challenge assumptions and expectations. Outside, the city seemed suspended in the rain, yet inside the gallery, a quiet energy built between them, the hum of the street and the soft patter of water on the roof creating a private stage for this unfolding narrative. As Dominic glanced once more at the paintings and then back at Emily, there was a sense of recognition that neither had expected, a shared acknowledgement that the meeting was significant beyond appearances. Emily returned to her desk, continuing her routine but now with the subtle knowledge that her world had expanded, that the storm had brought not just rain but an encounter that would mark the first chapter of a story defined by challenge, resilience, and the undeniable pull of two strong-willed individuals who had crossed paths under circumstances that promised intrigue, tension and the slow, unfolding possibility of connection that neither power nor influence could force, yet both would feel keenly in the moments to come. As the storm continued outside, Emily and Dominic stood apart yet connected in that silent understanding, the gallery a sanctuary of art, independence, and the first spark of a dark, compelling and complex relationship that neither of them had anticipated yet both would be drawn into with increasing intensity. Emily Harper stepped back from the painting she was carefully aligning on the gallery wall, the early morning light filtering through the tall windows and casting soft reflections on the polished hardwood floors, a gentle quiet filling the space with the occasional distant hum of traffic from the street outside. She adjusted her scarf and straightened her posture, feeling the familiar comfort of routine as she prepared for the day ahead, unaware that Dominic Rossi had returned, lingering near the entrance with a calm yet attentive presence, observing the way she moved with precise care, each gesture revealing her independence and quiet strength. As he approached, his eyes met hers and a subtle smile played at the corners of his mouth, conveying curiosity and respect rather than command. Emily greeted him with a polite nod and a careful, measured smile maintaining her composed demeanor. They exchanged brief words about the new exhibition and the weather, her voice steady, each syllable deliberate, reflecting her self-assured nature. Dominic listened intently, noticing the detail in the way she described each piece, the passion in her tone, and the confidence in her stance, realizing that her influence was not born from wealth or authority but from skill, dedication, and the ability to command attention through presence alone. Emily moved around the gallery, checking each frame, dusting lightly, arranging brochures neatly on the reception desk. Her movements fluid, intentional. Dominic followed her progress silently, appreciating the effortless way she managed the space, the interactions with visiting clients, and the natural grace she displayed, their eyes occasionally meeting with brief moments of understanding that carried more weight than words. The storm from the previous day had cleared, leaving the city streets wet and glistening in the soft morning light, the contrast of the outside world and the serene interior of the gallery creating a unique atmosphere of calm tension. As Emily finished her preparations and stepped back to admire the display, Dominic offered a thoughtful comment on one of the paintings, observing her reaction closely. Noting the subtle flicker of surprise and interest in her expression, she responded politely, maintaining her composure while showing genuine engagement with his perspective. The conversation shifted naturally to broader topics, art trends and community events, both maintaining a balance of polite exchange and unspoken awareness of each other's presence. Dominic recognized the unyielding nature of her character, the deliberate choices in her work and demeanor reflecting a level of integrity and self-reliance that intrigued him further. Emily moved toward the window to check the light on a series of new pieces, the golden glow illuminating her features and casting long shadows across the gallery floor. Dominic remained nearby, silently absorbing the environment, the energy between them quiet but palpable, a mix of professional respect and emerging curiosity. The day progressed, with Emily welcoming a few visitors, demonstrating her expertise and warmth, all the while Dominic observed discreetly, making mental notes of the way she navigated social interactions with both ease and authority. The gallery filled gradually with the soft sounds of conversation and movement, each moment reinforcing the subtle, growing dynamic between them, a connection built on mutual recognition of character and quiet confidence. Emily continued her routine, attentive to every detail of the space, yet aware of Dominic's presence, the exchange of glances, the shared appreciation for the art, and the unspoken acknowledgement of each other's strengths creating a delicate tension that promised the unfolding of an extraordinary relationship, one rooted not in control or dominance, but in recognition, respect, and the intriguing potential of two strong-willed individuals meeting under ordinary circumstances that carried extraordinary implications. The people who are used to hearing yes never forget the first person who says no. 3 days after Dominic Rossi's second visit to the gallery, Emily Harper stood beneath the warm glow of pendant lights preparing for the opening night of a new exhibition. The small space transformed by fresh artwork, carefully arranged displays, and the quiet excitement of guests beginning to arrive. Conversations filled the room as local collectors, business owners, and art enthusiasts moved between paintings, holding glasses of sparkling water and discussing color, technique, and inspiration while Emily greeted each visitor with the same sincere attention she offered everyone, treating a first-time guest exactly the same as an experienced collector, her confidence effortless and genuine. Meanwhile, Dominic entered the gallery shortly after sunset, his presence immediately noticeable despite his attempt to remain discreet. Several guests recognized him and exchanged curious glances, whispers spreading quietly through the room, but Dominic paid little attention to them, his focus settling almost immediately on Emily as she spoke with a young artist near the far wall. She looked composed and radiant beneath the gallery lights, her attention fully devoted to the event she had spent months organizing, and for a moment Dominic simply observed, appreciating the way she belonged in this environment, not because she owned it, but because she had built it through effort and conviction. Eventually their eyes met across the room and Emily offered a polite smile before returning to her conversation, a simple gesture that somehow intrigued him more than the admiration he received from everyone else present. As the evening progressed, Dominic found himself participating in discussions about art, architecture, and community projects, surprising several guests who expected him to remain distant, while Emily moved through the crowd ensuring every visitor felt welcome, the atmosphere warm and successful, until one of the city's most influential developers approached Dominic and casually mentioned that he should consider investing in the gallery, suggesting that someone with his resources could easily transform the modest space into one of the city's premier cultural destinations. Several nearby guests nodded in agreement, assuming such an offer would be viewed as an extraordinary opportunity. But before Dominic could respond, Emily happened to overhear the conversation and approached, her expression calm but thoughtful. The developer immediately turned toward her and enthusiastically explained how much easier her future could become with the backing of someone as powerful as Dominic Rossi. For a brief moment the room seemed to quiet, curious eyes shifting toward Emily, waiting to hear her response. She listened respectfully before smiling and thanking him for the suggestion. Then she explained that while support was always appreciated, the gallery represented something deeply personal, a place built around creative independence rather than outside control. Her tone remained warm and professional, yet her meaning was unmistakably clear. She would not surrender ownership of her vision simply because someone powerful offered assistance. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt longer. Several people appeared surprised by her answer, while Dominic remained completely still, studying her expression. And then something unexpected happened. Instead of appearing offended, he smiled slightly, a genuine expression of respect crossing his face, because once again Emily had demonstrated something he rarely encountered: the courage to remain loyal to her principles even when presented with an easier path. Later that evening, as guests began leaving, Dominic paused near the entrance and thanked Emily for the invitation to attend. She returned the gesture with a polite smile, and as he stepped outside into the cool night air, he realized he was no longer interested in what he could offer her. He was becoming fascinated by the one thing he could not buy: her respect. Emily Harper returned to the gallery the following morning to oversee the delivery of new artworks and the installation of sculptures in the main hall. The sunlight streaming through tall windows illuminated her focused expression as she coordinated with the staff, ensuring each piece was positioned perfectly, her calm demeanor inspiring confidence in everyone around her. While Dominic Rossi arrived shortly after, not as a visitor but as someone invited to discuss a potential community partnership that could benefit local artists, he walked through the space, observing the way Emily managed each detail, from the careful placement of lighting to the delicate arrangement of flowers on the reception desk, and he noted how naturally she interacted with the delivery team, her tone polite and encouraging, his attention drawn to her confidence and dedication. As they approached the largest sculpture, Emily explained her vision for the exhibit, her words articulate and precise, showing a deep understanding of the artist's intentions. Dominic listened, genuinely interested in her perspective, recognizing that she was not only a curator but also a leader with a clear sense of purpose. Later they paused near a corner where a group of young students from a local art class had been invited to view the gallery. Emily knelt slightly to speak with one of them about a painting, her patience and warmth evident, while Dominic observed quietly, noting how she commanded respect not through intimidation but through knowledge and empathy. As the students left, one of them shyly approached Dominic to ask a question about a painting, and he took the time to answer thoughtfully, the contrast between Emily's structured guidance and his spontaneous explanations creating a dynamic interaction that impressed the gallery staff. Then Emily suggested a brief tour of the new installations, moving through each room with Dominic following, their conversation flowing naturally from art to the importance of supporting local talent, occasionally glancing at each other with subtle smiles that indicated mutual respect. Later, a delivery of rare frames arrived, and Emily efficiently directed the team while Dominic assisted without hesitation, both demonstrating teamwork and understanding without any spoken need for hierarchy. As the morning progressed, the gallery became busier with visitors and journalists arriving to cover the exhibit. Emily greeted each individual personally, introducing artists and explaining the significance of each piece, while Dominic moved among the crowd, listening and engaging respectfully, noticing the admiration people had for her competence and presence. At one point a journalist approached with a question about potential funding for future exhibitions, and Emily responded confidently about maintaining independence while encouraging support for community initiatives. Dominic silently acknowledged her commitment to principles over convenience, the interaction leaving a quiet impression on him. As the tour concluded and the final installation was completed, Emily stood back to observe her work, satisfaction and pride clear in her expression. Dominic joined her, both taking a moment to appreciate the harmony of the space, the sunlight highlighting the textures and colors of the artworks, and though they did not need to speak, an unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of mutual admiration and the shared realization that their encounter had become more meaningful than any business arrangement could have foretold. The following week arrived with clear skies and a steady breeze drifting through the downtown streets. And for the first time in months Emily Harper allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction as she unlocked the gallery doors before sunrise. The success of the recent exhibition had brought new attention to local artists, several paintings had sold, and inquiries continued arriving from collectors across the city. Yet despite the encouraging momentum, she remained focused on the work ahead. Believing that success was something that needed to be earned again every morning, she moved through the quiet gallery carrying a cup of coffee, pausing before each display to ensure everything remained exactly as intended. The soft golden light filtering through the windows illuminating the artwork and casting long shadows across the floor, creating an atmosphere of calm anticipation. Meanwhile, Dominic Rossi sat inside a private meeting room several blocks away, reviewing reports and listening to discussions about investments, properties, and business opportunities, but his attention repeatedly drifted elsewhere, returning to thoughts of Emily and the gallery she had built through persistence rather than privilege. He respected many people, but admiration was rare, and he found himself increasingly aware that Emily represented something he could not easily categorize. Later that afternoon, Emily attended a City Arts Council gathering, held inside a historic building overlooking the river. The event brought together artists, educators, sponsors, and community leaders to discuss future cultural programs. She arrived carrying a folder of proposals and immediately immersed herself in conversations about grants, public workshops, and educational outreach, her enthusiasm genuine and contagious, while several attendees recognized her growing influence within the local arts community. Dominic happened to be present as well, invited by council members interested in expanding private support for cultural initiatives. When Emily entered the conference room, their eyes met briefly, a familiar acknowledgement passing between them before each returned to separate conversations. Throughout the meeting, Emily spoke passionately about creating opportunities for young artists who lacked resources, emphasizing the importance of access, mentorship, and community engagement. Her words resonated throughout the room because they reflected lived experience rather than prepared speeches. Dominic listened from across the table, observing how naturally others responded to her leadership. She did not demand attention, yet she consistently earned it. After the meeting concluded, several council members gathered around Dominic, proposing large-scale sponsorship arrangements that would place his name prominently across future projects. But before he could answer, he found himself glancing toward Emily, who stood near a window speaking with a group of students about scholarship opportunities, completely unaware of the attention she was receiving. And in that moment he realized that her impact came not from visibility but from purpose. Later, as guests gradually departed, a sudden summer rain began falling outside, forcing attendees to wait beneath the building's covered entrance. Emily stood near the steps watching droplets ripple across the river below, holding her folder against her side while enjoying the unexpected pause. Dominic joined her a few moments later, neither speaking immediately, comfortable enough now to share silence. Eventually their conversation turned toward ambition, sacrifice, and the strange ways success changed people's expectations. Emily admitted that maintaining independence often came with difficult choices, while Dominic acknowledged that power frequently created distance rather than connection. The honesty surprised them both, because neither offered such thoughts easily. The rain continued falling as city lights reflected across the wet pavement, and for several quiet minutes, the rest of the world seemed to fade into the background, leaving only two people discovering that beneath their differences existed a growing understanding neither had planned for, yet neither seemed willing to ignore. Emily Harper returned to the gallery the following morning with a renewed sense of determination. The sunlight streaming through the large windows cast intricate shadows across the wooden floor, highlighting the delicate brushstrokes on the paintings she had curated, each piece carefully selected to evoke emotion and spark conversation. She moved from one display to the next, adjusting lighting and angles, making small but meaningful changes to ensure each artwork could be appreciated fully. As she worked, she reflected on the previous evening's conversation with Dominic Rossi, the way his attention had lingered on her words, and the subtle acknowledgement of shared understanding had left her both intrigued and cautious. Meanwhile, Dominic was seated in his office, reviewing proposals from various business ventures, yet he found his mind repeatedly drifting back to the gallery and the woman who refused to be swayed by his influence. He had been accustomed to people acquiescing to his decisions, but Emily's independence challenged him in a way he had not anticipated. Later that afternoon, Emily attended a workshop she had organized for emerging artists. The room was filled with vibrant energy as young creators discussed their inspirations, techniques, and aspirations. She guided them with patience and insight, offering feedback and encouragement, demonstrating her commitment to fostering talent in a nurturing environment. Dominic appeared quietly at the doorway, observing the scene, impressed by her ability to lead and inspire without demanding attention. He approached her as the session concluded, and their conversation naturally turned to the importance of mentorship and authentic engagement. Emily shared her philosophy that true success comes from supporting others and building community, not merely accumulating recognition or wealth. Dominic found himself listening intently, recognizing the depth of her perspective. As the sun began to set, the gallery's exterior glowed warmly, casting a golden hue on the surrounding streets. Emily closed the workshop with a few final words, reminding the participants to stay true to their vision. Dominic offered to assist with resources for future projects, but she declined politely, maintaining her autonomy while appreciating his support. The interaction was respectful, thoughtful, and marked by a growing sense of mutual regard. Later, Emily returned home, organizing her notes and preparing for upcoming exhibitions. She felt a sense of calm accomplishment, aware that her vision was unfolding exactly as intended. Dominic, in turn, left his office with a renewed understanding of Emily's unique approach to leadership and creativity. Both characters navigated their respective spaces with awareness and purpose, recognizing that their growing connection was based on respect, shared values, and the subtle, unspoken acknowledgement of each other's strength. The evening ended quietly, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets after a brief rain, leaving both contemplating the balance between independence and collaboration, and the possibilities that lay ahead as their paths continued to intersect, creating a tension and anticipation neither had expected but both silently welcomed. Some people change your future without ever asking for permission. 2 weeks later, the gallery was busier than Emily Harper could ever remember, the success of the recent exhibitions attracting visitors from across the city. And while she appreciated every opportunity, the increased attention also brought new responsibilities, new expectations, and a growing number of invitations she had little interest in accepting, because what mattered to her was not recognition but purpose, and each morning she reminded herself of that before unlocking the gallery doors. On a bright Thursday afternoon, she found herself preparing for a charity event organized to support arts education programs in underserved neighborhoods, a cause she deeply believed in. Volunteers moved through the space arranging displays and information tables, while local artists donated pieces for a silent auction. The atmosphere, energetic and hopeful, and throughout the preparation Emily worked beside everyone else, carrying boxes, adjusting decorations, and solving problems before anyone needed to ask. Meanwhile, Dominic Rossi received an invitation from one of the event sponsors and decided to attend, not because of the publicity or business opportunities, but because he knew exactly who had invested countless hours into making the evening possible. When he arrived shortly before sunset, the gallery glowed with warm lighting and conversation. Guests filled the rooms, music played softly in the background, and Emily moved effortlessly through the crowd, greeting visitors and helping young artists connect with potential supporters. Dominic observed from a distance at first, noticing once again how naturally people responded to her presence. She never sought attention, yet she consistently became the center of every meaningful conversation. As the evening progressed, several donors approached Emily with offers of assistance, some sincere, others clearly motivated by personal recognition, and she handled each interaction with the same gracious professionalism, thanking people for their interest while protecting the integrity of the program she cared about. Dominic admired the balance she maintained, because he understood how difficult it was to refuse opportunities when they arrived wrapped in attractive promises. Later during the event, a representative from a large development company proposed funding an entire arts initiative in exchange for significant influence over future decisions. Several guests immediately reacted with excitement, assuming such an arrangement would be impossible to reject. But Emily listened carefully before explaining that while support was valuable, the mission itself could never become secondary to outside interests. Her response, polite yet firm, causing a brief silence among those nearby. Dominic watched closely and felt something unexpected: pride, not because she had refused the proposal, but because she remained exactly who she claimed to be regardless of circumstances. After the auction concluded and most guests began leaving, Emily stepped onto the rooftop terrace connected to the gallery, seeking a few moments of quiet after the long evening. The city skyline stretched before her beneath a canopy of stars while distant lights reflected across the river. She leaned against the railing and finally allowed herself to breathe. Moments later, Dominic joined her, carrying 2 bottles of water and offering one without a word. She accepted with a grateful smile, and together they stood overlooking the city, discussing the event, the artists, and the future of the program she hoped to expand. There was an ease between them now that neither had expected when they first met, built slowly through observation, honesty, and mutual respect. And as the night air moved gently across the rooftop, both recognized that something important had changed, because for the first time neither was focused on what separated their worlds, they were beginning to notice what connected them. The morning light spilled across the city streets as Emily Harper walked to her small studio apartment, the calm after the previous night's event offering a sense of relief and quiet reflection. She carried her sketchbook under one arm, feeling the gentle weight of possibility as she considered her next project. Dominic Rossi, meanwhile, had returned to his office high above downtown, the panoramic view of the skyline reminding him of the stakes of his position. Yet his thoughts drifted constantly back to her, to the way she commanded respect without ever demanding it. As Emily entered her studio, she arranged her supplies and began working on new designs inspired by the conversations and encounters from the charity event, each stroke deliberate, capturing both emotion and subtlety, the sunlight highlighting the colors on her palette. While outside the city hummed with energy and movement, Dominic received a call from a client but found it difficult to focus, replaying in his mind the small gestures and smiles that Emily had shown. He felt a pull toward understanding her world more fully. Later in the afternoon, Emily decided to visit a local cafe to take a break and gather her thoughts. Sitting by the window with her sketchbook open, she observed people passing, the reflections of sunlight creating intricate patterns on the table. Dominic coincidentally entered the same cafe, noticing her immediately, yet choosing a distant table to watch. Her focus remained on her art, unbroken and inspiring. He admired her concentration and the way her presence seemed to command the space without a single word. As the day progressed, they exchanged glances and subtle gestures across the room, each recognizing the growing curiosity and connection between them. After finishing her sketches, Emily packed up and prepared to leave. Dominic approached, offering a polite greeting, and they shared a moment of laughter over a small misunderstanding about an order, the ease of the interaction creating a bridge between their separate worlds. Walking out together, they strolled through the city streets, exchanging observations about architecture, art, and the simple joys of everyday life, discovering shared tastes and unexpected commonalities. As the afternoon light shifted to a golden hue, their conversation deepened, allowing for more personal stories and reflections to emerge, each story revealing layers of character and vulnerability. Dominic listened attentively, feeling the genuine nature of her responses, while Emily recognized a warmth and attentiveness in him that contrasted with the intimidating reputation he carried. By the time they reached a quiet park overlooking the river, the city seemed to fade around them, leaving only the two of them immersed in discussion and gentle laughter. Realizing that connection could exist even between worlds previously thought too distant, they paused on a bench, the soft breeze carrying the scents of flowers and fresh grass, exchanging smiles and comfortable silences, understanding without words that something meaningful was taking root. And as the sky began to darken with the early shades of evening, both felt the shift in their relationship, a mutual awareness that their interactions had opened a path toward trust, understanding, and perhaps the beginnings of something neither had anticipated. And as they parted that evening, the promise of continued conversations and shared experiences lingered in the air, leaving them both with a sense of anticipation and the quiet thrill of discovery in the slowly changing rhythm of their lives. As the first light of dawn crept over the city skyline, Emily Harper felt a calm determination settle over her. Reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, the moments of connection with Dominic Rossi replaying in her mind, their laughter, subtle glances, and shared silences forming a tapestry of trust and mutual respect. She stepped onto her apartment balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air, feeling the quiet strength that had grown between them, while Dominic, across town, looked out from his high-rise office, watching the streets below yet thinking only of her, of the way she carried herself with unwavering confidence and grace, their worlds now intertwined yet still distinct, the city humming with life as if aware of the subtle but profound change occurring within both of them. As Emily moved through her morning routine, arranging her sketches and preparing new designs, each line drawn with intention and reflection of her experiences, Dominic received a message that prompted a smile, a note from her highlighting a small but meaningful detail from their previous day. A simple act that reminded him of the care and attention she brought to every moment. Later, they agreed to meet at a quiet cafe tucked away from the bustling streets, the interior warm and inviting, sunlight filtering through large windows, casting patterns across wooden tables. Emily arrived first, setting her bag down and ordering a tea, while Dominic entered moments later, offering a reserved but genuine smile, his presence commanding attention without intrusion. They shared an easy conversation, exchanging thoughts on art, architecture, and the nuances of the city that surrounded them, each revelation deepening their understanding of one another. As the afternoon progressed, they walked side by side through a nearby park, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowers and freshly cut grass, their steps slow, allowing space for reflection and shared stories. Emily laughed at a small humorous observation, and Dominic's smile mirrored hers, unguarded and warm, the connection between them palpable. By the time they reached a quiet overlook above the river, the golden hues of sunset bathing the scene, both paused to take in the view, realizing how much they had come to trust and value each other's presence. Words became unnecessary as they shared a look filled with meaning, an acknowledgement of the journey and the bond formed through patience, understanding and respect. As evening approached, they parted ways with a lingering sense of anticipation for future encounters, the city lights beginning to twinkle below, each reflecting the spark of possibility and the subtle thrill of shared moments. In the quiet that followed, both felt a renewed sense of hope and inspiration, aware that the paths they had chosen to walk together, while still tentative, had created a foundation of connection, respect, and the gentle promise of something enduring and profound in the narrative of their intertwined lives.